Good day, students. It is now time for our third story on the U.S. Civil War. Our story today is called The Controversy Over Slavery. Our words today are abolitionist. Abolitionists are people who work to abolish or end slavery. Example, the abolitionists met together often to talk about their plans to end slavery. Our next word is agriculture. The science of producing crops, farming. Example, Joey studied agriculture in college so he could learn how to produce more food on his family's farm. Next word, cotton. Cotton is soft white fibers that surround the seed of a cotton plant. Example, little wisps of cotton blew off the cotton plants and flew through the air. Our next word, economy. Economy is the system by which people produce or trade goods. Example, Americans and people in other countries help make the U.S. economy stronger when they buy goods produced within the United States. And our last word is factories. Factories are buildings where goods are manufactured or made. There are many toy factories around the world that produce children's toys for people to buy. In today's read aloud, you will hear some differences in the southern versus the northern community. The word economy describes a system by which people produce or make goods or items to trade or sell with others who want those goods. When people trade, buy, or sell goods with one another, they are cooperating. Because of this cooperation, people can get resources such as food, clothing, and shelter they need that they might otherwise not be able to produce or make for themselves. When more and more people engage in trading, buying, and selling, we say the economy is strong. We learned about how Harriet Tubman worked on a tobacco plantation in the South. Plantations were an important part of the Southern economy. How the people in the South support themselves and earn money to build and buy the things they need. Southern economy depended on farmers and plantation owners to produce certain crops that other people wanted to buy. To produce these crops, Southern plantation owners treated people from Africa unfairly by forcing them into slavery and making them work on their plantations for no money. Even though it was not their choice, enslaved Africans contributed value, labor, and skills to the success of plantations. It was wrong of the plantation owners to treat enslaved Africans poorly just because they thought the African people were different from them. The community that developed among enslaved African Americans helped them survive because they relied and helped each other. Does anyone know what a controversy is? Again, our title is The Controversy Over Slavery. So controversy is an agreement it's an argument or disagreement that happens when people have different opinions. What do you think the controversy over slavery was, and who was involved in this controversy? Remember in lesson 1, we were introduced to the different parts of the United States people and how they had different opinions about slavery, and that this controversy led to a war called the Civil War. Some farmers in the North grew corn and wheat as well as other fruits and vegetables Some northern farmers also had livestock like cattle, sheep, and pigs, but the North did not have the right weather for growing crops that were grown in the South, like cotton, sugar, and tobacco. People in the North could buy these crops from farmers in the South. So farmers in the North grew mainly for feeding people and animals, and enslaved Africans were not used on these farms. Unlike the Southern economy, which relied on agriculture, the Northern economy was focused more on industry and manufacturing. That meant workers were paid to make things in factories using machines. Many northern cities were trading centers for iron, coal, and wood. Northern cities had factories for turning iron into steel, a strong metal that would be sent to other factories to make trains, engines, buildings, bridges, tools, weapons, and all sorts of things. Northern cities also had factories for making bottles and jars, furniture, clothing, books, and much more. The factories in the North had access to railroads and shipping ports to distribute goods made there. Because the South wasn't producing a lot of these things in their region, they could buy these goods from the North. People as far as Great Britain would buy steel from northern factories, helping the northern economy. Factories were an important part of the northern economy. Thousands and thousands of people worked in northern factories. These factory workers were not slaves. They were paid for their hard work. It was true that factory bosses could be harsh. The pay was often pitiful and the work difficult, dangerous, and tiring. However, factory workers did have more freedom than slaves, and they had the possibility of a better life. Even though slavery became illegal or against the law in the North before it became illegal in the South, not everyone in the North was against slavery. Because slavery was not a part of their everyday life, some people in the North didn't really think much about it. A small group of people in the North, however, were absolutely against slavery, no matter what it did for the economy. These people saw slavery as evil. They thought people from Africa should be treated as free human beings. These people saw slavery as the cruel and hateful practice that it was. People who worked to abolish or end slavery became known as abolitionists. This group of abolitionists continued to grow larger and larger over time. By the mid-1800s, there were thousands of abolitionists. Some became famous, like Frederick Douglass, who had been an enslaved African who had escaped, Wendell Phillips, and Susan B. Anthony. Those three are pictured here, but there were just a few of the thousands of people involved in the abolitionist movement. The abolitionist movement refers to organized activities or events to help end slavery. Harriet Tubman met and worked alongside many famous abolitionists. They printed newspapers with names like the Liberator, and they pursued or convinced political leaders like Abraham Lincoln to see why slavery was wrong. So guys, this is like our persuading letters that we practice writing. The abolitionist movement became a strong force in America, one that could no longer be ignored. Abolitionists and enslaved Africans worked together in other ways to rebel against plantation owners and bring an end to slavery. While many enslaved people were being held to freedom along the Underground Railroad, others were trying to rebel or fight back against the plantation owners in the South. One such event took place in Virginia in the area that is known as Harper's Ferry in West Virginia. In that event, an abolitionist named John Brown tried to get guns and other weapons to slaves to help them rebel against the plantation owners. In another event, a slave named Nat Turner led a group of slaves to rebel against plantation owners in Virginia. In South Carolina, another former enslaved African named Denmark Vesey helped plan a large rebellion against plantation owners in Charleston. Denmark Vesey's plan was discovered before it could be carried out. However, there were also many small acts of rebellion by enslaved Africans against those who enslaved them. Even in these years leading up to the Civil War, there were many violent events in which many people lost their lives in the struggle to end slavery. The United States was growing, spreading west, and adding new states. As the country expanded west, so did the Mason-Dixon line. By the 1850s, states north of the Mason-Dixon line were free states. In other words, slavery was against the law. In the southern states of the Mason-Dixon line, slavery continued to be legal. And there were more territories to the west that could soon be joining the country. The more the country grew, the more reasons people found to argue over this problem of slavery. As abolitionists fought to end slavery, they also wanted to make sure the new territories and new states did not allow slavery. Others, though, did not agree with the abolitionists and felt that new states should be able to decide for themselves whether or not slavery should be legal. By the 1850s, it was clear that the problem of what to do about slavery, whether to end it or to allow it to continue and to spread, was tearing the country apart. All right, question time. What is the Mason-Dixon line? Question 2. What were some differences between the North and the Southern economies? Question 3. Were factories more common in the North or in the South? Why? 4. Were cotton and sugar and tobacco grown mostly in the North or the South? Why did the South grow these crops? Question 5. Who were the abolitionists? And 6. What things did Harriet Tubman do that showed she was an abolitionist?